Hello, good morning, students. Today I am going to teach you Standard 7th, Subject English, Lesson number 3.3 A Crow in the House, Part 2. On one of Aunt Mabel's visit, Caesar alighted on her arm and crackled, "Kiss, kiss." Aunt Mabel was delighted and possibly flattered and leaned forward for a kiss. Now here author is saying that one day when Aunt Mabel came to visit his house, Kaiser went on her arm and started saying kiss kiss, and that aunt was very much flattered on this crow, and she made her head forward for a kiss. But Kaiser's attention shifted to my aunt's gleaming spectacles, and thrusting at them with his beak, he knocked them off. Aunt Mabel never was a success with the pets. Now, instead of kissing to this aunt, Kaiser attention, that is a crow attention, went directly, that is shifted towards, not forehead, towards the spectacles what she was wearing, and he knocked them off. And Aunt Mabel never was a success with pets, means pets did not like this Aunt Mabel. Pet or pest. Now what aunt is saying? Aunt is saying, is it a pet or a pest? Grandmother insisted that Kaiser was a pest in spite of his engaging habits. If he had restricted his activities to our own house, it would not have been so bad, but he took to visiting neighboring houses and stealing pens and pencils, hair ribbons, combs, keys, shuttlecocks, toothbrushes, and false teeth. Now, grandmother is saying to that aunt, this is a pest. It is not a pet. Why? Because his all this rubbish activities is restricted not only to a house. He is going and visiting to the neighboring house, and he is stealing all these rubbish things and bringing it to our house. He was especially fond of toothbrushes and made a collection of them on top of the cupboard in my room. Most of the neighbors were represented in a house by a toothbrush. Toothbrush sales went up that year. So did grandmother's blood pressure. Now what the author is saying, he is saying that this crow, that is Kaiser, was very much fond of the toothbrush, means he used to like toothbrush a lot. So he used to steal toothbrushes from the other neighboring houses. Every now and then neighboring members used to come in his house and say that our toothbrush is lost. Now what author is saying, that year was very much sales, that is sales went up, sales were high of the toothbrush. Now Kaiser spied on children going into the banya's shop and often managed to snatch sweets from them as they came out. Now what other activity Kaiser is doing? He is spying the children, means he is looking at the children that where they are going, and the children used to go to the banya shop, that is a sweet keeper shop, and when they come out of the shop, this crow, that is Kaiser, used to steal. He used to snatch the sweet from their hand. Clothes pegs fascinated him. Neighbors would return from the bazaar to find their washing lines in the mud and no sign of the pegs. These two found their way to the top of my cupboard. Now all these neighbors were also disturbed because of the activities of the Kaiser. And all the lost thing which they have not found in their house, they used to find it on the top of the cupboard of the child. It was Kaiser's gardening activities that finally led to disaster. He was helping himself to our neighbor's beans when a stick was flung at him. breaking his leg. I carried the unfortunate bird home, and grandfather and I washed and bandaged his leg as best we could. Now it was what? It was Caesar's gardening, means he was used to gather the things from the other neighboring families or the neighbors, but one day it became a disaster when a stick was flung at him, means a stick was attached on his leg. It broke the leg of this Caesar, and they brought the Caesar back to home, and grandfather and the child had washed his leg and did a bandage also on the leg, but it would not mend, but it would not be straight. It was totally broken. Kaiser hung his head and no longer talked. Now Kaiser was in a very much pain. He was suffering with a lot of pain. He was not able to keep his head up, and he was not talking also. He grew weaker day by day, refusing to eat. An occasional sip of grandmother's homemade wine was all that kept him going. Now days passed. The Kaiser, that is a crow, grew weaker and weaker. Why? Because his leg was broken and it was not being bandaged, means it was not being made. It was totally broken, and this crow was in very pain. And he started refusing to eat, means he was not eating anything. Instead, he was eating or having a sip of grandmother's homemade wine. And this is all which kept him going. One morning, I found him dead on the sofa, his legs stiff in the air. Poor Kaiser, his antisocial habits had led to his early death. Now, one morning, what a child found it? He found it that Kaiser was dead on the sofa. His legs was lying in the air, and poor Kaiser was dead. Why he was dead? Because of his antisocial activities, antisocial habits which he was having, walking here and there, jumping or hopping here and there. All these habits has brought him to the early end of his death. I dug a shallow grave in the garden and buried him there, along with all the toothbrushes and clothes pegs he had taken so much trouble to collect. Now what the child had done? Child had dug a shallow grave, means he had put the crow in the grave in the garden only, and he had buried all the stuff which this crow had brought with so much of pain, that is toothbrush. He used to like toothbrush a lot, so he had buried Kaiser, that is a crow, with the toothbrush which he has taken so much trouble to collect it, and he had made his life, he had brought his life to end because of his antisocial habits. Thank you.